I've been putting off making this video for months and months now. I'm a little nervous to share my journey with cervical dysplasia as it is pretty private, and I also know that anytime you share anything that has to do with health and wellness, there will always be backlash. But I'm really sharing this as the very video I wish I had when I was starting off on my cervical dysplasia journey, when I was completely lost and confused. And I'm guessing that if you're watching this, you have cervical dysplasia or you know someone who does. Maybe you're looking for other healing options, so hopefully it's all good vibes here. And this is me sharing my personal journey. I'm not a medical doctor, not claiming to be, and I'm also not telling you what you should do with your body. And one of the reasons why I really think that I was able to heal from cervical dysplasia is because I was working with my doctor, with my gynecologist, and I was also working with a certified Ayurvedic practitioner. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Eva. I'm a certified Ayurveda health counselor and yoga teacher with a background in integrative nutrition. And as an Ayurvedic health counselor, I believe that what works for one person might not work for another. Ayurveda is an individualized approach to healing. So that means that all the things I'll be sharing today, the things I did to treat my cervical dysplasia, just because they worked for me does not mean that they'll work for you or anyone else watching this. Now, if you're wondering, what the heck is Ayurveda? Ayurveda is an ancient system of healing from India over 5,000 years ago. It's known as the sister science to yoga sometimes, and it's a holistic system of healing. So it treats not just the physical body, but also the mental body and the spiritual body. It's based on nature, and it works in the prevention of disease and treats not just symptoms alone, but tries to get to the root cause of what's causing the imbalance or disease. It's an individualized approach. So going back to what works for one person might not work for another. You'll probably hear many different stories of people with cervical dysplasia, and you might notice that everyone's body's different. Everyone will react differently to different treatments. And I truly believe that the best medicine is the medicine that you believe in. So clearly, I believe in Ayurveda. I've dedicated my life to learning it, to teaching it. And this was the medicine I truly believed could heal and treat my cervical dysplasia. Okay, so go back all the way to 2014. I was diagnosed first with HPV before cervical dysplasia. And when I was diagnosed with this, my doctor was pretty much just like, "You're young. This usually clears up within a couple of years on its own. Don't worry about it. Just keep coming back for your annual exams." And that's something that I will say over and over again. Please make sure you're getting tested. Go for your regular PAP exams. I think I skipped 1 year at the most, but once I was diagnosed with cervical dysplasia, I was going every single year, and eventually I was going 2 times a year. So stay on top of your exams. So fast forward now to 2019, I went for my regular PAP exam. I still was HPV positive, but I also came back with an abnormal PAP exam. So my doctor first said, "Don't freak out. This doesn't mean you have cervical cancer or anything, but your result did come back abnormal, so I'm going to have you come back in for a colposcopy." Now, at the time, I had no idea what a colposcopy was, so of course I went home and I Googled it, and I started freaking out thinking that I had cervical cancer and something terrible was going to happen. I went in for the colposcopy a couple of weeks later and also had to get a biopsy at the same time. Now, in very, very simple terms, colposcopy is when you come to your gynecologist, you lie down on the table the same way you would get a pelvic exam. Your legs are open. It's very awkward, very uncomfortable. They wash your cervix with a vinegar-like solution so that they can see the abnormal cells better. And then if they do see through a microscope abnormal cells, then they'll do a biopsy, which is when they take some of the tissue, some of the abnormal cells, to then send to a lab to get tested. And looking back, this was a pretty uncomfortable situation, getting the colposcopy. I don't feel like personally I was given a lot of heads up about what was about to happen to my body, and it's not like it's the most painful thing to go through. If anything, the biopsy is a little bit more of a pinch. That's what's a little bit more uncomfortable, but it is very demanding on your emotions because you're lying down, legs open, you're feeling very vulnerable, it's very uncomfortable, and your mind is racing with, of course, all the worst things that could happen. So I just remember leaving the doctors feeling very lost and alone, and like I just had no information about what was happening to my body. A couple of weeks later, I heard back from my doctor, I got my results, and I was diagnosed with low-grade cervical dysplasia, so CIN 1. There's different grades of cervical dysplasia. I had the lowest grade you can get. And basically, my doctor was like, okay, let's keep an eye on this. We're not going to do anything yet. Come back in a year for another exam, and we'll see if anything has progressed. It might go away on its own, it might not. And now that it's years later, I have a background in Ayurveda, I look back and I think that it's almost kind of silly to assume that cervical dysplasia will just go away on its own, because clearly when you have any type of imbalance, disease, infection, pain, whatever it is, it's your body speaking to you and saying, there's something going on. I'm not happy. I'm not thriving. There's something wrong here. And so to not make any changes to diet and lifestyle, or supplementation or taking herbs, to me now looking back, I'm like, that's just so silly to think that anything would change, because I didn't make any changes to my life at all. I just kept going on as I was. The following year, I decided to actually go with a different OBGYN. I sent in all my medical history. I had a PAP. It came back abnormal again. I went back a few weeks later for the colposcopy and biopsy. Same results, nothing had changed. I still had a low level CIN 1 cervical dysplasia and HPV. And my doctor this time said, I'm going to have you come back in 6 months for a PAP exam, and then if it is still abnormal, then you will do another colposcopy. So at this point, I was being set up to have a PAP exam every 6 months. However, she did say I would only have to go through the colposcopy once a year, which was great overall because I hated getting colposcopies. They're super uncomfortable. In some ways, it was good news that it wasn't getting worse, but also nothing was changing in my health. It wasn't going away. And now, before I get into talking about how I treated cervical dysplasia, just a little background about my health, my body, my lifestyle. I was a full-time yoga teacher at the time, which many people think yoga teachers are the healthiest people in the world, and that's not true. I'll tell you that. I was teaching many, many classes and private clients and workshops and trainings a week. And so I had a weird schedule, no daily routine. My eating routines were weird. I wouldn't have time for meals. I would snack a lot. So as a result, my digestion was pretty low. I didn't sleep well, and I definitely suffered from anxiety and stress. So that was my lifestyle. I was kind of healthy. I did a lot of yoga. I ate pretty healthy foods, but looking back and where I've come to now, I've made so many big changes to my health to really get to where I am now. Fast forward to 2020, I decided to go to school to become an Ayurvedic health counselor. At first, I didn't want to help other people, honestly. I just wanted to learn about my body and food and digestion and self-care practices to help myself. As I was learning Ayurveda, or if you're new to Ayurveda, Ayurveda treats imbalances primarily with diet and digestion. So not diet as like dieting, but diet as the foods that you're eating. And there's a big emphasis on strengthening digestion. There's also lifestyle practices, which can include a daily routine, self-care practices, gentle cleansing when necessary, or nourishment when necessary, and then at times extra herbal support. So during this 2-year program, my whole view of my body completely changed, and I truly felt like I was getting to know my body better than I ever had, and I was finally learning how to take care of my unique body, like what worked for me as an individual. So because I was in school for Ayurveda, I was making a lot of changes to my life, and I'm going to share some of these because these are not the specific things I did to treat my cervical dysplasia, but I think because I was making all these diet and lifestyle changes, my body was like, it was ripe. It was ready to do the more specific things to treat cervical dysplasia. A few things, I won't get into everything because honestly, Ayurveda is such a broad science and I made a lot of changes, but food-wise, instead of snacking and grazing throughout the day, I started eating 3 full meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, how to snack in between when I needed, but tried not to graze, and this was to strengthen my digestion. I also started eating a lot more warm cooked food as they are just easier for the body to digest. And as much as possible, I was eating whole, unprocessed, organic foods when possible. Really nothing crazy at all. Lifestyle, I made a lot of lifestyle changes. I started teaching less public yoga classes, and this allowed me to have a morning routine in which I did self-care practices such as scraping my tongue, swishing oil in my mouth each morning, taking a few minutes just to sit and breathe in the mornings, to have breakfast before coffee, and to wake up and go to sleep around the same times each day. So this was all pretty much between 2020 and 2022 that I was in this program, and I was making all these big diet and lifestyle changes. Come end of 2022, the more I was thinking about my body and having cervical dysplasia and studying Ayurveda, the more I was like, okay, something is going on because I still have cervical dysplasia. I still have HPV. I've had it since 2014, and it's not getting worse, but it's not going away on its own. So I was realizing there's something going on with my immune system, that it's just being very stubborn and not fighting these abnormal cells. So I decided at that point that I needed to work with one of my teachers who's also a certified Ayurvedic practitioner to get some extra support to specifically try to treat HPV and cervical dysplasia. And I was still seeing my gynecologist every 6 months. At this point, because it had been a couple of years and nothing was changing, my doctor was kind of talking about the option of doing surgery, the LEAP procedure eventually, and I was not closed off to this. So I don't want anyone watching this to feel shamed if you've already had surgery for cervical dysplasia or are thinking about it, because I was very open to it, and I thought if this is what my doctor thinks I should do at some point, I'll go through it. I'll do what I have to do to take care of my body. However, and I think this is because I teach a holistic system of healing, I really wanted to at least try to heal myself naturally. I figured, what do I have to lose? I'm going to at least try this. And my doctor wasn't saying you've got to have surgery today, but just within basically like the next 6 months or so, we should start having a serious conversation about it. So in October of 2022, I scheduled to meet up with an Ayurvedic practitioner, one of my teachers, to discuss cervical dysplasia and treatment options. And I went into it with very little hope of actually treating cervical dysplasia. I didn't know if it was going to work at all, but again was like, what have I got to lose? And my next scheduled PAP exam was for January. So I just had to count. That's about 3 months away, which kind of works out well because Ayurveda is not a quick fix approach. It takes time for your body to adjust to the diet and lifestyle changes that you're making. And usually we kind of give people about 3 months to start feeling changes in their body. So we said, let's do these things for the next 3 months, have your exam, and then we'll see what happens from there. Now, in terms of diet and lifestyle, because I was already making these changes and had been working to make changes for 2 years, my teacher didn't have to give me a lot of recommendations. The one recommendation that she did kind of have me consider was adding meat to my diet, because at the time I had been a vegetarian for 6 years. This was actually something that I brought up to her, that the more I listened to my body, the more I kind of felt like my body felt a little bit depleted. Maybe I need some meat. And she was like, if you're feeling that, then she recommended I try it, to at least start with adding bone broth to my diet, which I did. And then eventually I started getting local meat from a local farm where I live, and didn't eat it all the time, but just added it to my diet like once or twice a month, and it felt good for my body. So the next thing that my Ayurvedic practitioner recommended I do is that I start taking a daily herb called Kaishor Gugalu, which I always think is so funny sounding, Gugalu. I love saying it. And basically this is an herb that you should really take under the supervision of a certified Ayurvedic practitioner. It helps to remove excess heat from the body, so you can think of it as like inflammation reducing. And it also helps to scrape toxins from the channels of your body. Okay, the next two recommendations that she gave, I honestly feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about here in the public, but I've already made it this far. So here we go. I'm an open book at this point. Now, a little context. Ayurveda is all about treating head on whatever is imbalanced. So like If your nose is congested, you put oil up your nose. If you're getting a lot of headaches, you might put oil on your head and massage your head. So because my imbalance was in the cervix, we decided to create 2 different treatment plans that would put herbs specifically, basically up my yoni to heal the cervix. So one of the recommendations that my teacher recommended I do is to make these small tube-like or round, you can think of it as like a bolus, using 3 different herbs and coconut oil or cacao butter. I chose to do coconut oil. You make these little round balls or tube-like boluses, and pretty much you stick them up your yoni. She recommended I do it minimum 10 times a month. You do it at nighttime before bed. And I will say, if you choose to do this, you have to wear a panty liner because it can make a mess because the herbs, they just will stain your panties. So this is something that I was like, I'm going to go hardcore for the next 3 months. I'm open to anything. I'm going to try this, even as crazy as it sounds. And it definitely wasn't my favorite thing to do. It was a little bit uncomfortable, but I was really diligent about doing it 10 times at night per month, at least through all of October, November, and at least halfway through December. The 3 herbs that I use for this, one is called neem leaf powder, and this is also a very cooling herb that removes excess heat from the body and can help to boost your immune system. I also use calendula powder, which has anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties to it, and echinacea powder, which stimulates the immune system. So I would take these 3 powders, mix them with the coconut oil, all equal parts, make the little balls, and then use them 10 times minimum per month. The next very kind of big practice that I did for the next 3 months is pretty much a washing of your cervix, you can think of it. And so using triphala powder, which is also an Ayurvedic herb that should be used under the supervision of a practitioner, that along with aloe vera and boiled water, you make this solution, you put it in an enema bag, and then you wash your cervix. And I would do this 3 times per month within the same week. So I choose 1 week in a month and do it 3 times, where you're basically washing your yoni, your cervix. This is one that you have to do when you're in the bathtub because you have to lie down, use an enema bag, and I did this as well pretty diligently for the next 3 months. Now, the next practice that I want to share, I did that this wasn't actually something my teacher recommended I do, but it just kind of felt natural to do, was every single morning I already had a practice of sitting down and breathing for 5 minutes. Literally, I would set a timer for 5 minutes because that's all I had time for in my mornings. And I would simply just sit and sometimes do a breathing practice or just kind of try to quiet my mind. But while I was on this kind of 3-month intensive, I did something which I'd never done before, and that was to bring my attention down into my pelvis, down into my womb space, and to simply listen. In my opinion, I've started to feel like I've had cervical dysplasia and HPV for years now. That's a sign my body's been speaking to me, and all I've been doing is ignoring it. I haven't been doing anything about it to try to help my body heal until now. So I would simply close my eyes for 5 minutes, bring my attention down to my pelvis, and just try to quiet the chatter and just listen to what my body was telling me that it needed. I would oftentimes say affirmations too as I was listening. One that I used every single morning was, my body can heal itself. So if that's something that you're open to, again, I'm not saying this had anything to do with my healing, but for me, I had to not just try to make changes to my physical body, but I also had to make that mind-body connection in my healing journey. So I did these practices for the next 3 months. January of 2023, I had my regular pap exam. I went in and same thing. She said, we're going to do your exam. If it comes back abnormal, you'll have to do a colposcopy. I was keeping my fingers crossed so much because I did not want to go through a colposcopy. I know that there's side effects that I won't get into to doing colposcopies, and at this point I had already done several since 2019. So I waited for my results. It took about 3 weeks to get them, which felt like forever. I remember getting the email on my phone. I saw it, my hands were shaking, my heart was racing, I was so nervous, and again, I had no expectations. In fact, I was like, I've only been making changes for 3 months, most likely nothing's gonna come back any different than it has been. And pretty much I got an email from my doctor. The message in my patient portal said, great news. Your exam did not come back abnormal and you don't have HPV. And I will share the little screenshot of what she said on the screen. I was just so happy in the moment. I started getting teary-eyed. I couldn't believe it. And I really was like, I don't know if I believe this still. It doesn't feel real. And even then I was like, was it the stuff I did or did it just go away on its own? But when I look back, I had HPV for almost 10 years. I had cervical dysplasia for about 4-ish years. And it never changed until I started making these big changes in my life. Now, what actually treated it? Was it my diet changes, my lifestyle? Was it doing the Yoni balls or washing of the cervix or taking herbs? Was it the positive affirmations? Was it decreasing stress in my life? I don't exactly know. Deep in my gut, I think it was all of it, and I think a big part of it was just me bringing attention to having cervical dysplasia. So again, Ayurveda is an individualized approach. This is the journey I went on to heal cervical dysplasia and HPV. It worked for me. It might not work for anyone else in the world. Either way, even if I still had cervical dysplasia, I'm so glad I did these things because I truly got to know my body better than I ever have in my entire life. And that's really what matters to me, is that I now have a deeper connection with my body and I can actually listen to my body better. To kind of sum up what I did, the changes that I made lifestyle changes where I had more routine in my day and minimized stress in my life. I strengthened my digestion by changing the foods I was eating and most importantly, how I was eating and when I was eating. I added herbal support, taking daily herbs. I did the Yoni or cervix washing, and I did the small boluses made of herbs to also cleanse the cervix. If I could give you one takeaway from this video, it's that health and healing is never linear. There's not just one path, there's not just one solution. What works for one person might not work for another, but I do think that at least one of the very first steps to healing is to listen to your body. I had spent years just ignoring that there was something going on with my body, and it wasn't until I brought attention to that part of my body that needed the healing that change started to happen. If anything, I hope that this video just gives you a little bit of hope. If you have questions or comments, hopefully kind ones, feel free to put them in the comments. Feel free to subscribe, follow, all those things if you'd like. And that is all. Enjoy the rest of your day.